Welcome to the Crowd Sport Podcast. Kevin Stewart, Reggie Walker, John Ellis is back, and this week we're joined by Spectrum News 1 Sports Director Mike Solarte. Mike, it's an honor to have you on. Thanks for coming on with us.
Guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to talk sports with some knowledgeable folks and Reggie.
Already then.
All right, he's got some.
And off we go.
He's coming out with some. He's already got one in the chamber. This is great.
If Reggie wasn't my broadcast partner with the Thunder, I would not pick on him. I love working with Reg, so he knows I'm just playing around.
Yeah, how is that going with that Arena Football League over there at the Bowplex?
We're just kind of waiting now. We're just waiting for the championship game against North Texas on June the 26th, and I'm a little bit concerned about the Thunder having this much time off between games. They were great during the regular year, but the man that we know as Louisville or Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, Reg, he's playing in the spring league now with one of those teams. I don't know if he's going to be around for the championship game. That's something we're going to have to investigate.
Yeah, I did hear that. That would be an issue. And one thing I would tell the fans,
Jean-Luc Childs, by the way, is his name. Sorry,
Jean-Luc Childs.
Yes.
One thing I would tell the fans too about this team is, to Mike's point, yeah, it is weird that they're getting this time off and how they respond. Guys, this is a team that's held several opponents in single digits in arena football and a few others under 21 points, which is unheard of in a sport where the field is so short and it's generally, quote unquote, easier to score. So I think it's just an interesting and well-coached group. And I've had fun calling games with Mike.
Excellent. And just when you think, it's June, kind of sports are kind of dead, we get some news on Monday morning. We'll get to the news out of Raleigh in a bit, but we'll start off with our own backyard. The Panthers announced Monday morning Taylor Zarzor will be in the booth in the preseason, but he's going to be joined by Steve Smith. And I'm sure this is wonderful news for Panthers fans, no?
What's up, son?
Yeah.
Wonderful news with anybody with two ears. It's fantastic.
I think it's great. I mean, Steve did so much work with the NFL Network, and I don't know if that's going to continue. But again, these are preseason TV games. There's only 3 of them. I mean, he's a fan favorite. They love him, and the thing about Smitty, he doesn't hold back. If he sees something he doesn't like or he thinks needs to be called out, he's going to call it out. And so, I mean, I look forward to it. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I talked to our friend Jim Zoki this morning. I texted him and I said, "This is your future radio partner in the booth." And he said, "Now, listen, I do think I want that job, and I'm not getting ahead of myself. But I'd love to see Zoke and Smitty paired up down the road in the radio booth. I think it'd be great. And I think Smitty might have bigger expectations for himself. He might want to get back into the national scene as far as the the color commentary goes. But I think it's great. It's going to be fantastic to hear that old 89 voice. And Mike, you've been around for a minute. You remember some of the sound bites, the rules and regulations and Ice Up Son and some of the stuff he said in the locker room. I think Janoris Jenkins probably remembers something he said about a certain thing that we posted earlier. He's so entertaining, but he's also so good at just breaking the game down, Mike. He's great.
And he's so honest.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the linchpin for Steve's success, is the fact that he's a blunt instrument. He will tell it like it is, what he sees. If he likes it, he's going to compliment it. And if he doesn't like it, he's going to call it out. So I think he's going to do a great job.
Yeah, and he's going to have some things to talk about this year. I mean, all eyes are going to be on Sam Darnold. No, I mean, we're going to be watching Sam Darnold, but we're going to be watching Justin Fields in Chicago. But as we enter Phil Snow's second season on defense, bringing guys like Brian Burns back and Dante Jackson back and Shaq Thompson back, but also bringing in guys like Hassan Reddick and Denzel Perryman and Morgan and, of course, J.C. Horn. What are we looking forward to in the second year of the Phil Snow defense?
Well, I think honestly, when you look at year number 1 for the Panthers with Joe Brady and Phil Snow and Chase Blackburn, all under Matt Rule, Blackburn, the only holdover from Ron Rivera. So you look at that coaching staff, and they really had to find their sea legs in the NFL. And you think about all the close losses that they had last season, all the games that were a touchdown or less that they were in, chances to, kick game tying or game winning field goals in the final possession, having, the quote unquote last shot. All that stuff was, I thought, very, very positive. Now that's not going to be good enough.
Right.
And I think we've got to see Phil Snow maybe get a little bit, I shouldn't say we've got to, but I think we could see Phil Snow get a little bit more creative in his play calling now that he's got a better handle on his personnel, knows the strengths and weaknesses of all of his guys, having a year under his belt with him. In the new additions, I mean, I love the Hassan Reddick signing. I absolutely love that. But again, that back end continues to be, the maligned part of that defense. And you just don't know how good that group's going to be. But again, you got a good front seven. The back end you can kind of hide it a little bit.
Right.
You can get away with some things that you might not be able to if you didn't have a good pass rush. So again, with the Panthers traditionally, their front four and their front seven have always been, the key components of that defense. And I would expect that to continue. But I'd like to see what kind of looks Snow kind of throws in there, and maybe changes some things up from what they did a year ago to be maybe a little bit less predictable. Offensively, like you said, Sam Darnold, all eyes are on him, and how quickly he can stop seeing ghosts, as he said last year. I mean, that was pretty telling. That was pretty telling when he said that. And, so
all timer.
But again, he's 3 years into his career, and playing in New York. I mean, being a quarterback for a New York franchise is probably as high pressure as being the center fielder for the Yankees or being a goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, it's just, there's always that pressure on you to succeed and perform and succeed. And so here there's going to be pressure, but it's not going to be quite as magnified, I don't think, as New York was.
I think the thing that's interesting to me about this team is defensively, right? Getting Perriman, he's been productive in this league, right? And so I think in getting him, they backhanded, right, in a backhanded way, kind of got three players in getting him. They got him. Obviously, they knew they were going to, at that point, they could focus on drafting a defensive back, which means they could get ready to move Jackson to that third corner kind of role if they need to do that. And then they get Jeremy Chin back at the safety spot, which is more natural. So I think sometimes when you get one player, you can kind of pick up several with the moving parts. And then I also saw that it looks like Clinton Dix is at least going to be around for mini camp this week. Not sure if he's going to stick. I think that's a nice veteran to have in that rotation in the back end. He's been a productive player in this league as well. So I think you add all those pieces, and I agree with Mike. It's going to depend on what the looks that Phil Snow draws up. But from a personnel standpoint, he definitely will have a better handle on that group. And then it's just a chance for those guys to be able to play fast because they understand the system and go make plays.
We talked to Matt Bowen from ESPN a few weeks ago. Billy and I did on our podcast on Blue Wire. And Matt brought up a good point about scheme. Last year it was all cover three. They led the league in cover three. And so, Mike, you were at some of these games. Reggie, you watched. Kevin, you know the drill. The Kansas City game comes to mind where Rasul Douglas blew a coverage down the sideline. It was cover three. It was a soft zone. And, when you're breaking down coverages in a soft cover three, that's a problem. Phil likes to play aggressive. Phil Snow, we talked to Cody Alexander last year on our pod. He did some work with Baylor. He's a former assistant, told us everything about Phil Snow schematics. He likes playing man press. That was a large part of the inspiration behind getting J.C. Horn on this team. Now, will that end up being the right move, the wrong move? We just don't know. We won't know for a few years. It'll be interesting to watch somebody up in Chicago develop. I'll tell you that. That's one hell of a decision they've made. But I like Horn a lot. I think he's going to bring some physicality on the outside to where they can get away from playing the shell that they played last year and get up on the line and play some of that Jalen Ramsey coverage. That's what he reminds me of. He's long, he's physical, he's lean, he's just a hell of a competitor too, man. They just love his grit. Sam Darnold, I mean, it's a complimentary football situation. Mike, you brought up a good point, and you're like I said, you've been around this team for a while. So I like talking to you about this. The Panthers, like in 2002, if you remember the John Fox year, they had some of these games where they came close. They had heartbreakers against Tampa. They had a heartbreaker several times a year, just like that against in superior opponents. And eventually they turned the tide, but they had to start sniffing how to win first in order to cross that bridge. And then week 17, they knocked the Saints out of the playoffs. They carried that momentum over. And I think Matt Rule has a chance to sort of bridge that the same way for this team this year. I just said the word bridge, and I'm reminded of the quarterback situation. It is no longer Teddy Bridgewater. It is Sam Darnold, who saw ghosts. That's weird. He had an interesting week on the vaccine front, obviously, with his comments. And, I don't know what to tell you there. But other than that, he's got a lot to work on with his footwork. Greg Cosell was on our pod as well, talking about some of the things he sees on tape. The eyes and the feet don't connect. And a lot of guys that study the tape see that with Sam. In the pocket, it's a bit of a struggle. He's got to calm down. I think, to your point, guys, being in Charlotte, which is, Mike, no offense, Kevin, Reggie, no offense, it is not a soft media market, but it's not New York. They're not going to put you in a blender and spit you out.
As a man from New York, I agree with that.
He's going to have a fighting chance to sort of rehabilitate, and I think Sam could use some of that. And I think it'll be fascinating to watch. But look, if Matt wins 5-6 games again and Sam does not play well, and Justin Fields has a 28 touchdown, 10 interception season, well, it's going to get kind of ugly. So we got to see some progress at some point on the win front.
Hold on a second now. Before we start talking about 28-10 for Justin Fields, we have to remember Chicago is the place that receivers go to die. Okay. I mean, Muhsin Muhammad even said that after his quick trip there, after leaving Carolina, is because Chicago traditionally has never had fantastic quarterback play. I mean, you really have to look deep into the annals of Chicago Bear football to find a quarterback.
Harbaugh was the best of all time, probably, right?
Well, Jim McMahon won him a title. So,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, I think you look at that and you say, okay, Justin can be good, but I don't think that he can be, it's Chicago. And that's my hometown. That's the team I grew up watching.
Okay.
There was always about running backs in Chicago. And if you had pass catchers and you had a quarterback that can get him the football, that was a bonus. But as far as Darnold and the ghosts thing, I mean, I just think that it got to be so overwhelming in New York with all the changeover he had to deal with in coaches and all the changeover in personnel and them never really getting him any kind of help. I mean, there was never any offensive line help for the guy. I think you just think about it. He's a lamb to the slaughter. So I think that some stability with an offensive line group that is coming together, but they're all coming together with the new quarterback at the same time. So I think that's an opportunity for that entire unit to kind of grow together. And I think it'll be good. I think that'll be good for Sam. I'm not looking for Sam to be an MVP in his first season in Carolina, but I would not be surprised if he plays well and they keep things very simple for him at the start, let him kind of, adapt, learn, improve, get a better handle on the playbook, and then start, you can start to open things up. You don't have to go to, the back pages of the book, the playbook to get success. I mean, you start with the simple stuff and then you build and build and build. And that's obviously what OTAs are. That's what minicamp is. That's what training camp is. And Darnold seems to be fully invested in the process of learning the system and being the guy. And he knows that he's the guy coming in right now. So, the best, the most wide open receiver in a quarterback's head is what's between his ears. It's not so much, the coverage or anything. It's the confidence to be able to pull the trigger, deliver the football where it needs to be. And I think that Darnold is a guy that can rediscover, the player that he was before the 3 years in New York and all the promise that went with what he brought out of college into the draft. I just think he's in for a renaissance. I'm really hoping for that because he just seems like a sharp kid, and you just want to see a guy like that do well.
And to that point, I'll say it this way, guys. And I was going to ask you guys this question, but I don't think that's fair. So I'll just say it this way. For a guy in Joe Brady, who some people have talked about maybe a head coach in the next year or two, if the Sam Darnold thing goes well, his dream will be achieved. If the Sam Darnold thing does not go well, his dream will not be achieved. And I think it's that simple. So I think not only is Sam Darnold on his own looking to save his career, but I think Joe Brady in a lot of ways is looking to further skyrocket his career with the proper development, if you will, of a guy like Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about Darnold this year. And Mike, you mentioned it. Mini camps, OTAs, training camp. We didn't have that last year. So Teddy Bridgewater, he was kind of set up he wasn't really set up for success as far as getting on the field and getting reps and getting.
Real quick, just one more time. Sorry, on the quarterback situation. Reggie can attest to this from the tape he watches too. And Mike, you've seen Teddy's throws too. Teddy was a great guy. Teddy did his best he could with what he had to work with. He was injured. He came back from that knee injury in 2016. He's an outstanding guy. But man, when you studied the tape on him all throughout the process, that contract always bothered me because I just told myself, looking at the film, he's not going to be able to push you vertically. He's not going to be able to challenge you. He plays within structure. He's going to deliver what you need in the 20 to 20 zone. Red zone, it's going to be an interesting thing for Sam, see if he can improve the red zone. But I think what you'll see is a little more, to Mike's point, a bit of a renaissance on Sam's part in an effort to maybe push the ball vertically for once, because he has a collection of receivers now that get open. DJ Moore led the league in yards per catch last year. Robbie Anderson, he knows all about Robbie through the 92-yard bomb against the Cowboys a couple years ago. Yeah, I would love to see Sam just grasp it and get it. He's a sharp kid, and hopefully this will be a good spot for him. But, yeah, the vertical game will be back.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Darnold in this year going forward. If he can't succeed with the weapons he has now, he might have to look for another Monday to Friday job.
Well, that's if he's upright, because that's the first key is he's got to be upright. And, we heard some comments, from Matt Rule about, Irving maybe being that left tackle solution, or at least being obviously in that mix right now. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but what I've said, and you guys know I've said it on this podcast before, and Mike, you and I have had this conversation sort of offline, if you will. They addressed the offensive line. Whether or not the addressing of the offensive line is going to be the solution is what we don't know. And that's always the mystery of free agency. But I will give the organization credit, at least to the way they feel. They directly addressed that offensive line thoroughly in the offseason. And that's really all you can add. You can go get a guy that's a 5-time Pro Bowler and he shows up. I've always said this. There's one of two reasons that anyone's a free agent and available. Either someone thinks they're too expensive or someone thinks they can't play. The question is, when they show up for you, do you get the one that everybody just said, he was a little bit too expensive for me to pay? Or do you get the one that everybody was saying, no, he just ain't no good?
That's what happened to Dave Gettleman in New York with Nate Solder.
I knew that was
It
coming.
hasn't worked out. Sorry.
Wow.
It hasn't
Matt
worked out.
Khalil, part 2.
That's a really good call right there. That's a really good call.
Let's get to some news out of Raleigh. And Mike, I'm glad you're on with us this morning so we can talk about some Hurricanes hockey. Elliot Friedman is reporting that the Hurricanes have given permission to Dougie Hamilton to seek a sign and trade with other clubs. And I spoke to this with Reggie last week. I think he's kind of in the position with Alex Pietrangelo was last year, leaving St. Louis before he got that mega deal with Vegas. The 7-year, $61 million. Now, Hamilton's 4 years younger. There's no doubting his talent. I mean, he was a top 10 scorer among defensemen this year in the league. But when you have $4 million in cap hit at least going to Brett Pesce, Jacob Slavin, Brady Shea, and Jake Gardner, you got to pay Svetch. The goalie situation is like you assume Nedeljkovic is going to be the starter next year, even though he's restricted. Mrazek and Reimer are unrestricted. Is this the right move?
Yes. I say it's the right move only because let me put my light back up because it was dying there. Only because the NHL cap is not moving.
Right.
It was part of the agreement when they came up with their COVID protocols and how they were going to return, and they signed that extension to the CBA so that there'd be labor peace once they got to the back end of this thing. So the Hurricanes have a lot of decisions to make in terms of unrestricted and restricted free agents, and Hamilton to me is the biggest piece. But if you can get something in return for him, that's if he finds a dance partner. Okay, mm-hmm. So it's predicated on all that. He's got to find a team that wants him. He's got to find a team that that can afford the contract that they're going to trade for. And then when it adds up, the Hurricanes have to be satisfied with that in order to pull the trigger on a deal to get back assets that will probably be less expensive than Dougie Hamilton and will help them in terms of their salary cap number. Now, all that being said, giving him the opportunity to talk to other teams about a potential sign and trade is one thing. He may not like the offers that are out there, and he may decide that Carolina is the best place for him to continue on playing. And I honestly am hoping that that's going to be the case, because in his stops in Boston and in Calgary, he played well, but he never really seemed to me anyway, it never seemed to me that he really fit with those teams. Like he didn't, he was always maligned, even though he was a plus player in Calgary and a plus player in Boston is, in his plus minus ratings. He always played well in those places, but he never got the due that he was deserving of, never got the credit for it. And he was always, he didn't do this, or he didn't do that, or he didn't do this. But what he did do was being overlooked. And his contributions in Carolina are not being overlooked at all. The fact that he was fourth on the team in scoring with 42 points in the regular season. He was quarterbacking that first power play unit that was so good throughout the regular season. It vanished in the postseason, but teams have all the time to game plan and scheme and watch film. They can take things away, just like the NBA. But I think that Dougie Hamilton is a guy that finally has found a home for his playing career. And it would be, I think, in his best interest to just re-sign at, if it's got to be at a bit of a discount, I mean, it's got to be at a bit of a discount, but I mean, still a discount. What's a discount? You make $6 million as opposed to $7 million? I mean, the four of us here, three of us are not making Reg Walker money. So when you talk about guys, exactly right. So you talk about guys that, okay, how much is enough? How much is too much? I get you got to take care of your family, and I get that, your window as a pro athlete is not very big. But again, this is just me talking from the other side of the fence here. And to me, from a hockey standpoint, Dougie Hamilton should stay in Carolina and find a way to work it out with the Hurricanes to extend his time, whether it's a bridge deal or if you go long term and spread that money out over, down the road when the cap does increase. I think they've got to figure something out. Go ahead,
Mike, I got a very important hockey question for you here, as I'm a connoisseur of the game. Better Hurricanes hype man, Ron Rivera or Matt Rule? Let's get your take on it.
Matt Rule really cranked that siren last week.
Better, Mike, because I keep hearing Sam Kinison in that Matt Rule voice every time he screams. I hear Sam Kinison. Come on, let's go! I was laughing my ass off at that. Who do you think, funny. Rivera or Rule? Who do you got?
I'm going to have to give the nod to Rule, but only because of this. When Ron was working the siren, Ron was going through some stuff. His pre-cancer diagnosis, so he may not have been at 100%. I love Ron, but I think Rule just had the edge just on health. That's all.
But speaking of, since we're kind of playing the game, right, with the two teams and the organizations and essentially the two cities, right? And in some ways, Raleigh and Charlotte don't necessarily like to play nice in the sandbox.
It was like that when I was in Raleigh, and now that I've lived in both places, I don't get it, but whatever.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to ask, Mike. The fervor, right? But how are the Hurricanes seem to be received fairly well by the hockey community here in Charlotte. I would think the Panthers the same way in Raleigh. Is that reception pretty similar in both cities for the team that doesn't actually play in that city?
All right, now let me. It's story time, kids. Pull up a chair.
Yes,
love it. I knew what I was doing.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story to kind of give you some background on why the Panthers are not as beloved in Raleigh as you might think. When I first started in Raleigh, working there in 1995, Panthers' first season, I was working for the Fox affiliate, WLFL. We lost the Fox affiliation a couple years later, but that's a different story altogether. So first Sunday, first game in Panthers franchise history that is played, and people are calling our station, calling our newsroom saying, where in the hell are the Redskins? Why are we watching these guys? It's a Washington.
Wow.
Raleigh was a Washington market. And I still got friends that live in Raleigh that are diehard Washington fans. Oh. And we got so many hate calls. And it's like the newsroom and actually our entire building doesn't determine which game we get. Those three letters, that FOX, they call the shots. And if they're going to assign us the Carolina game because they are in the area of dominant influence, or ADI, we have to carry it. So that's not our choice. And so we got so many hate calls. And finally, it's like, I hear, where's the what? And I would just hang up. So I just wouldn't even listen to it. It's like, I'm not even, keep calling back. I'm just going to keep hanging up on you.
We get those calls at SOCs to this day.
Right. So, so it was one of those deals where, when it comes to, so that's a long way of getting back to saying the Panthers it's been a long time for the Panthers to kind of gain traction in the Raleigh market, because for the longest time it was a Washington market. And that's been difficult. At least it was difficult in the early goings. And of course, Carolina got to be pretty good, made a couple of Super Bowl runs. And so Panther fever kind of clawed its way up I-85, I-40 to get into Raleigh. So it's been a process for that franchise. But for the Hurricanes, they were even more well received when the Charlotte Checkers became their AHL affiliate. Now that agreement ended prior to the start of this past season. The Hurricanes are now affiliated with the Chicago Wolves. The Florida Panthers are the Charlotte Checkers affiliate, and they will resume play in the fall at the Bowplex. And so that'll be pretty cool. But it's a whole new cast of characters, new players, new coaches. Well, Jordy Kinnear is back. Jordy went to the Florida organization.
Chase Brisky too.
So yeah. So there's a couple of guys that'll be sprinkled in that have Charlotte familiarity, but overall, it's going to be a whole new experience with the players and that sort of thing, and the organizational ties. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that relationship's going to, how the fans are going to develop with that, because you see these players here, and now they're just going to Raleigh, and they're having so much success over there in Carolina. Jake Bean and Nedeljkovic and Lawrence and you name it. But now these kids are going to be going to South Florida in Sunrise, and I don't know if the Charlotte fans are going to identify with those kids as much.
Well, I think that Charlotte Checker fans are Charlotte Checker fans, regardless of the affiliation. I mean, remember when they were an ECHL team, they were affiliated with the New York Rangers for the first portion of my time here in Charlotte. Before, actually, they were with the Rangers the entire time when they were in the ECHL. Yeah, they were a Ranger. They were, because Al Montoya actually played here for the.
I remember that name.
Yeah. So when they went to the American Hockey League, they were the Hurricanes affiliate. And so guys, Brock McGinn, Warren Fogle, a couple more guys that saw time in Charlotte and are now playing in the NHL with Carolina. So it's been a great developmental system. And I think Charlotte Checker fans just are going to be Checkers fans. And they may develop some sort of affinity towards the players moving up to Florida, with the big club. But for the most part, I think that fans who go to watch hockey at Bojangles Coliseum, they just simply love to go watch hockey at Bojangles. And so I think they'll show up. I think it'll be good.
Red, did you have a point?
Yeah, Mike, I just kind of wanted to ask you this too, as the guy that, and I'll tell it because you're a humble guy. You're the guy that broke the story of the Canes making their way from Hartford to Raleigh. A big question for me is, because I've said this about the Panthers, and you talked about it took some time. Is it because there needed to be kind of a generation that grew up knowing that franchise, being from here, because Charlotte's such a transplant city, and then you look at the Canes in Raleigh, how much more can that fan base continue to grow, because now they're getting close to that stretch of time where their fans are full-fledged adults and grew up with the team their entire life?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, Panther fans in the Triangle, again, once they got more, I guess, immersed in what the Panthers are doing in Charlotte, they started to, some started to slowly get on board. But again, it was a long time Washington market. That was a very hard tie to break. But again, now you've got, if you're 20 years old living in Raleigh and you grew up there, you don't know a world without Panther football. If you're 20 years old in Raleigh, you don't know a world without Hurricanes hockey. So, it's at that point, the cycling is continuing, and now those 20 somethings are starting to have kids, and they'll be in that world. And so it'll just continue to grow and grow and grow. But that's a really good point about the generational nature of the fandom with both of them.
The Spectrum News One Sports Director Mike Solarte. Mike, thanks for coming on again with us this week. And
I get to see Mike again a week from Saturday.
Jesus.
Charlotte Thunder hosting the North Texas Bulls for the American Arena League Championship, 6:30. Is that correct, Mike? At Bojangles Coliseum?
Yes, sir. 6:30. We'll be ringside or whatever side we are.
There's often wrestling there after those games or before them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they've got a double dip that day though, because it's a 6:30 start. But yeah, we've got one of the strangest broadcast locations I've ever worked out of. Literally, we're on the boards. We're not up high. We're on the boards.
You're down right there on the baseline.
Mike has caught 2 passes this year, guys.
No. I caught one. I got hit by one, and I caught one. Dude threw a heater at me, and I was like, and I'm holding my spotter cards in my left hand, and so I'm like, oh, I got this. I can just slide, right here in the breadbasket, just reel it in. Hit my forearm and just careened into the stands. And I actually had a welt on my arm, and you could see, because the pebbling on the football, it kind of dragged my skin, so I had like lines.
Oh, did you go show Thomas and he showed you his scar, and y'all compare battle scars, man?
The dude threw a heater at me, and I wasn't ready for it. But I did catch the other one but it was easier because it was a tip drill. Ball was tipped up. I'm like, oh yeah, I got it.
Tips and overthrows.
Yeah, tips and overthrows. So
it's Thomas and Ted Ginn. They're doing this together, right? They must be having a blast, man. A couple old Panther OGs.
Jeff Reed, former kicker with Pittsburgh, and Frank Garcia is involved in Haas,
great.
the automotive king of Carolina, is involved in the ownership group as well.
Names from my
So
childhood. Jeez.
yeah, we've got a good. I think it's a really good ownership group, and Irvin Bryson. I think Reggie touched on it when we started. It's a really, really good coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I'm just interested. I'm not going to see these guys this week. I'm going to make a trip out to practice next week as we head into game time. But it's a group that has really worked hard. They're very talented. They're very skilled, and they play to the whistle. They are a good football team. So all the folks that are thinking about getting tickets, go and get your tickets. The championship game, one of these is a league championship game, has not been contested in this city. I don't think ever, Reg. I mean, I've been here a long time, but I don't think they've ever had an opportunity to contest a league championship.
Right.
Panthers won a conference championship, but this is it. This is for all the marbles. So charlottethunder.com. Go there and get your tickets today.
Nice.
All right, Mike, thanks for coming on, and keep your head on a swivel, all right?
Oh, he's got to protect me out there. That's why he does it. He's catching everything to make sure I don't get hit.
Because failed DBs
real
can't
MVP, Mike.
remember, defensive backs are failed wide receivers. Reggie knows it.
I detect no lies in that statement.
All right, see you all next week.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks, Mike.